Here's something uncomfortable. Most people will go through their entire lives and no one will really remember them. Not because they were bad people, not because they failed, but because they were interchangeable. Think about that for a second. If you removed yourself from your social circle, your school, your job, your neighborhood, would something genuinely be missing? Or would the space just close up, like water filling a hole? That's the question I kept coming back to, and I didn't like my first answer. There's this thing we do, quietly, automatically. We watch the people around us. We notice what they wear, what they say, how they react. And then, without even thinking, we adjust. We sand down the edges. The weird hobby goes unmentioned. The opinion that might cause friction stays inside. The thing you actually love becomes something you do alone, in private, like it's something to be ashamed of. And slowly, over time, you start to look like everyone else, sound like everyone else, want what everyone else wants. And you call that fitting in. But I think there's another word for it. Your brain is doing something very old right now. Tens of thousands of years ago, being rejected by your group wasn't awkward. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was death. If the tribe cast you out, you didn't survive the winter. Simple as that. So your brain learned, deeply, structurally learned, that being different is dangerous, that standing out could cost you everything. That instinct is still running, right now, in all of us. When you hesitate before sharing an unusual opinion, when you laugh at a joke you didn't find funny, when you change your answer because someone else looked at you funny, that's not weakness. That's an ancient system doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is, it was built for a world that no longer exists. The tribe isn't going to leave you in the forest anymore, but your brain doesn't know that, so it keeps optimizing for survival in a world that disappeared. And what it produces, in a modern context, isn't safety. It's sameness. I want to ask you something. When was the last time you did something and thought, no one else I know would do this, and how did that feel? For a lot of people, it feels uncomfortable at first, like standing in a room where everyone can see you. But then, sometimes, something else happens, something quieter. It feels like relief. We use the word weird wrong. We treat it like an insult, like it means broken or off or difficult. But when I actually look at the people I find most interesting, the ones I remember, weird just means specific. It means they have a thing, a real thing, not a curated thing, not a performed thing, a thing that exists whether or not anyone approves of it. Steve Wozniak wasn't building computers in his garage because it was cool. There was no world yet where it was cool. He was doing it because something inside him was completely absorbed by the problem. He wasn't performing passion, he just had it. And that specificity, that almost irrational focus on one strange thing, became the foundation for something that changed the world. I'm not saying everyone needs to change the world. I'm saying, what's your thing? And more importantly, are you hiding it? Most people are, not completely, not consciously, but bit by bit, over the years, the real stuff gets pushed to the background. You loved drawing but stopped because someone said you weren't good enough. You had strong opinions about how things should work but learned to keep them quiet. You were interested in something unusual and noticed that no one else was, so you let it fade. And the version of you that shows up in public, at work, at parties, in conversations, becomes a kind of average, safe, presentable, unremarkable. Not a bad person, just not quite a person either. More like a response to other people. Real confidence, and I mean the actual thing, not the performance of it, isn't about believing you're better than others. It's quieter than that. It's the ability to say, I don't know if you'll like this about me, and I'm going to do it anyway. That's it. That's the whole thing. Not arrogance, not indifference. Just a small, steady decision to not disappear. Here's something I've noticed. The conversations people remember, the ones they talk about years later, are almost never the safe ones. They're the ones where someone said something real, where someone admitted something unexpected, where someone showed a side of themselves that wasn't polished. And the strange thing is, when one person does that, it gives everyone else permission. You say something honest, something a little unguarded, and suddenly the person across from you relaxes because they've been carrying something too. Authenticity is kind of contagious like that. Let me bring this somewhere practical. I'm not suggesting you reinvent yourself overnight. That's not how this works. This isn't a Minecraft world where you can tear everything down and start fresh in one session. It's slower than that. More like one block at a time. Start with one thing, one opinion you've been keeping quiet, one interest you've been embarrassed about, one answer that's actually true instead of the one that's easy. Just one. See what happens. Usually nothing catastrophic. Sometimes something surprisingly good. And over time, the accumulation of small, honest moments starts to change the texture of your relationships, of your work, of how you feel when you go to sleep. There's also something worth saying about opportunity. Companies, collaborators, interesting people, they're not looking for someone who does the job adequately. There are thousands of people who do the job adequately. They're looking for someone with a perspective, someone whose presence actually changes the room, someone they can't quite replace. And you can't manufacture that. You can't optimize your way to being irreplaceable. You just have to be, actually, yourself, which sounds simple and is somehow the hardest thing. I think about this sometimes. We spend so much energy trying to fit in, trying to seem normal, trying to be liked by people who are also trying to seem normal. And underneath all of it, everyone is a little strange. Everyone has a thing they hide. Everyone is performing some version of acceptable. So we end up in this strange situation where a room full of interesting people have a completely boring conversation because everyone agreed, silently, to leave the interesting parts outside. You already know what your thing is. You don't need me to tell you. There's something, maybe several things, that you are genuinely drawn to, that you find yourself thinking about when no one's watching. The question isn't what it is. The question is what you're afraid would happen if you stopped hiding it. And usually, when you look at that fear directly, it's smaller than it seemed. I'll leave you with this. At the end of a life, the things people tend to regret aren't the risks they took. They're the years spent trying to be a version of themselves that no one asked for. The performances nobody applauded because no one could tell there was a performance happening. So here's what I keep coming back to. If you removed yourself, really removed yourself, the actual you, would something be missing? Or would the space just close up? That's not a rhetorical question. It's worth sitting with.